Hey guys, welcome back. So it's official, the Bitcoin ETFs have finally gone live, which has been months in the making. And my goodness, did a lot happen. From the largest ETF launch in history, to boycott Vanguard, to massive moves to the upside and the downside. But after all said and done, it was a momentous day for the crypto market. And anything that gets Elizabeth Warren's blood boiling is a good day. And so, got some great things to cover as we'll be taking a look at everything that has happened so far, including, first up, we'll see how this bull market is progressing against the previous ones. Then we'll take a look at seasonality, monthly and quarterly, and see what insights they can bring. And as the ETFs have just gone live, we'll finish with a bit of a ETF special. The volumes, the drama, the memes, and CPI which peed on the bonfire. Okay, so first up, despite all the roadblocks, it appears that Bitcoin and crypto is just playing out yet another of its 4-year cycles. And this means that this year is going to be a very exciting year in the crypto market. And so, starting with some bull market insights, and one of my favorite charts in crypto, the cycle bottom chart, as it shows the four-year cycles that have happened so far, the big bull markets, the big bear markets, and where we're at right now. And interestingly, where we're at right now is actually very, very similar to what's previously happened in the previous cycles. And even though we've had mega runs, mega crashes, there's been so many people saying crypto is the next big thing, so many people saying crypto is dead and never coming back. And lo and behold, after all of these opinions and noise, where are we? We're pretty much exactly where we've been every single time. So crypto appears to just be doing exactly what it does. And this just says that in the coming months and the next year or two is going to be a very exciting time. Now, as we can't really see what's going on here, let's just split it cycle by cycle. So this was the birth of Bitcoin and then what it went on to do. And interestingly, we are ahead of this cycle. And this one went on to do a 300 times increase. And if you're worried about little drops that are happening right now, in this cycle around this time, there was a huge drop, which the equivalent would probably take this down to about $30,000 to $35,000 Bitcoin. And this is one of the reasons why $1,000 or $2,000 drops just don't really impact me. Much bigger drops have happened in history, and it all turned out absolutely fine. Now, I think the days of these moves where it's going up 100 times, 200 times are probably a thing of the past. So let's move on to cycle 2. And the first thing you'll note here is that, again, we are ahead of this cycle. And this one went on to do over a 100 times increase. So again, even with a very sharp correction, we're still ahead of the curve. Now, in this cycle, this was the halving that happened here. So obviously there was a lot of narrative and people were more aware of the halving coming. And what happened? There was a massive run up to the halving. So this one definitely was buy the rumor and sell the news. As when the halving happened, it was overbought and had to come down. So it was falling, and then a big panic drop. And as always, in the biggest drops come the biggest opportunities, as this went on to do a crazy run. Now, cycle 3, and again, first thing to notice is that we are right on track to where it was in the previous cycle. So if we do get diminishing returns, then this cycle should be lower than the previous ones, but so far it's staying above every single one. So that is an important point to know and should help with any drops that we get. Now, the other big thing here is this hellish drop that happened in Bitcoin. And obviously this was the big COVID crash. And if Bitcoin's going down 30%, then the altcoins would have been battered about 50, 60, 70%. So luckily, touch wood, I don't think we're going to see such a hellish drop this time. But again, remember that in the absolute biggest panics, these are the very best buying opportunities as well. Although it definitely doesn't seem like it at the time. Now, halving happened here, and here it was pretty much around today's price, which the halving came in at. And again, interestingly, there was a drop after the halving on a couple of occasions. So I'm definitely expecting some volatility around the halving, but again, went on to do a stellar run. So in terms of the previous cycles, Bitcoin and the crypto market is looking very, very strong. And I just feel it's probably going to be higher than it is today. You're looking at about 50 to 60,000 by the time of the halving. Now, next up, another thing people like to look at is the seasonality. So we can look at previous years and see how Bitcoin and the crypto market did and compare it against previous months and cycles. So yellow boxes, we are now in a halving year. So these are the halving years here. And for me, when I look and study the seasonality month by month, honestly, I don't find it that useful, as it can be quite inconsistent. So, for example, the last couple of months that we just went through in the pre-halving year, November and December were very, very strong. If we look at the previous one and we look at November, December, this time they were terrible months. And again, the previous one, good months. So inconsistent. If we look at January of the halving year, which is right now, we look at this one and the entire market's doing very, very well. In the previous one, it also did well. And in the previous one, it didn't do well at all. Again, inconsistent. And that's a pattern I find at looking at this data, but obviously everyone sees data a little bit different. I think the one thing it does highlight is that 2 years before the halving year, this is the big crypto crash. And most of the months in this year are red. And again, if we look 2 years before the halving year, again, most of the months in this year are red. And again, here, 2 years before, again, most of the months are red. So the one consistent thing to take away is a big crypto crash likely coming 2 years after the halving. So maybe a better way to look at this is with a bit more data, and this is looking at the quarterly returns. So it batches together January, February, March, April, May, June, so forth. So in this halving year, Q1 was actually down, and again here Q1 was down, but so far Q1 is looking good. Now Q2, the time of the halving, looks historically very, very strong, very, very strong. So we should expect a big Q2. It definitely highlights that 2 years before is the big crypto crash. All quarters were red, 3 of the 4 were red, and 3 of the 4 were red here, so that's quite consistent. So if you're going to look at seasonality, I'd say quarterly is probably better than monthly. And for anyone interested in what Ethereum looks like, well, there's even less data, obviously, than Bitcoin, so you don't get a lot of years. So this halving year, Ethereum wasn't even born, and then 2020 was just positive, and so far, Ethereum's doing very, very well. In Q2, we can see it was positive. Q2 for 2020 was an excellent run for Ethereum, so expect some big things here. And I think this highlights a likely scenario, which is the big Ethereum rotation that I think's coming this year. So in the last halving year, you can see it was lagging Bitcoin, but then went on to do a 70% run, 60% run, and 100% run. And I think this is a likely scenario for this year, which may have already started. So that's seasonality. For me, it gives slightly mixed results, so take from it what you will. Now, as the Bitcoin ETFs have just gone live, we're going to do a bit of an ETF special in this episode. So here are all the different ETFs which went live. All in all, 10 different funds from mega institutions. So it really was a historic day. And this week is a historic week. And this is the bidding wars going on with their fees that they're taking. Had a number of companies giving initial offers before it reverts to a higher fee, including BlackRock's here. Interestingly, Grayscale has a very high fee, 1.5%. And when there's so much competition with much lower fees, this is a very interesting move here. And so I went down to a local pub in London to watch the ETF go live, and here is what it was like as it happened. We had the Bitcoin ETF about to go live, and everyone, you can say, was pretty pleased. And this was Larry Fink going into the BlackRock office. Joking aside, check out Franklin Templeton on Twitter. Now just remember, this is a mega institution, $1.5 trillion of assets under management, and they're putting laser eyes on their social media profile. So this is hilarious to see, and it means that Bitcoin and crypto is penetrating traditional financial services. Great to see. Now, what was very interesting, this is Bitcoin's dominance. So Bitcoin's share of the crypto market. And as the Bitcoin ETF went live, how about this? It actually dropped Bitcoin dominance and has been underperforming the crypto market, which was very, very surprising considering this was meant to be extremely bullish for Bitcoin. So where was this money going? Well, just as interesting, this is the Ethereum Bitcoin chart, which over the past 6 months has been struggling. And as the Bitcoin ETF went live, where did the money flow? It flowed into Ethereum. And it's Ethereum that has stolen the glory of Bitcoin on its big ETF launch day. So how interesting was that? And did you have that on your Bitcoin bingo card? And the other interesting thing that happened on the ETF launch, so this is just Bitcoin in dollars, so the normal chart, and this was Bitcoin, this was the ETF launch, and Bitcoin saw some massive inflows and it rocketed all the way up to $49,000. And then what happened? Well, the latest CPI inflation numbers came out, and it came out hotter than expected. And the CPI actually increased from the previous month. So what did this do? Well, it absolutely peed on crypto's bonfire when everything was popping off and crushed it all the way back down. And now it's back down to struggling. So here's something you need to know about the CPI. So firstly, for anyone who doesn't understand why a higher inflation number is bad for the markets, it just means if we've got high inflation, then the Fed can't turn on the money printer because printing money causes inflation. And if you've got high inflation, that's not the right thing to do. And secondly, to combat high inflation, you have to keep raising rates or keep them higher for longer. So the market says, me no likey. So here's something that is definitely worth keeping an eye on. And it's a website called Trueflation, and it shows inflation in real time. So what happens with the big CPI numbers that come out every single month is that they're always a month behind. So the ones that we just got was for mid-December. However, we're now well into January. So if you came onto Trueflation, you will have seen that month on month there was some spikes in December. So I was already apprehensive about this CPI number. However, the next big thing to note is look at what has just happened in January. So this is the print that we've just had, and there is a massive drop that's happened in inflation that's going on on right now. So my prediction is that the next CPI print that comes in is going to shock people to the downside. So this is a great way to see inflation in real time. And finally, this was a tweet that I just put out, and it was my 2024 playbook. And this is the most likely scenario for 2024. And this is something that is going to repeat and repeat and repeat. So what does it say? It says expect massive runs in the crypto market this year. Expect people to get massive FOMO. Expect to feel elated as you're making so much money in these massive runs. And it's an amazing feeling, but then expect things to get overbought. It's just the nature of things, and people get a bit too greedy, especially people playing with leverage. So then expect big corrections to happen and expect to feel fear, uncertainty and doubt, especially if you're in altcoins. And if you've chosen to be in altcoins, you have to expect the massive runs and the massive drops, and expect massive noise and a flurry of opinions on social media as everyone's freaking out and throwing out exactly what they think is going on. But just remember, these are all opinions, not facts, and then repeat. And then ultimately, by the end of the year, I think we're going to say, wow, didn't it all do really well in the end? And so the long-awaited Bitcoin ETFs have finally gone live, which means all eyes will be looking at the next events coming in crypto. And there are 3 coming. We have the Bitcoin halving, the Ethereum ETF, and Ethereum's next big upgrade, 4844, proto danksharding. I'd say don't worry about any short-term dips, as you saw, we're still ahead of the 3 previous cycles, which all went on to do ludicrous gains. I'd say monthly seasonality for me is not really that useful, as there's simply just not enough data points. So the quarterly ones are probably better, and take what you will from them. We saw that the latest CPI numbers did halt crypto in its tracks. However, I think the next print is going to surprise a lot of people to the downside. And from what I can see, it was Ethereum that stole the glory off Bitcoin with these ETF launches. Very interesting. So there you are, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and as always, if you did enjoy anything in the video, then drop a like, and a big thank you to everyone who does. If you have any questions or comments which you must get answered, then use SuperThanks below. And now, as promised, here is a clip from Donald Trump as he went around all the states explaining how much money he thinks will be going into the crypto market over the coming months.